Welcome to AstroTwins Radio, your cosmic GPS for life, love, and everything written in the stars. We're Tali and Ophira Edut, the AstroTwins, here to decode the astrology of the moment and help you navigate your destiny like a pro. Well, hey there, everyone. It's the week of March 9th to 15th. This year is flying by, 2026. And Tali here in Seattle.
And Opie in New York. And here we are. We are on the other side of the eclipse. And wow, while we hoped that it wouldn't stir up planetary unrest, it certainly did.
Well, an eclipse dovetailing with Mercury retrograde. So what are we looking at big picture this week while Mercury is still basically in the middle of its retrograde that began on February 26th and goes all the way until March 20th, the day of the equinox, an Aries season beginning. Mercury's retrograde in Pisces. And that's all happening in the middle of Pisces season. So you poor Pisces, you finally got rid of Saturn and you were ready to celebrate your birthday, and then you get hit with Mercury retrograde. So hopefully you're finding ways to, lean into nostalgia and reconnect with people from your past and do all the things that Mercury retrograde actually is good for. Speaking of retrogrades, on Tuesday, one of them is finally coming to an end. Jupiter, the planet of global relations, turns direct in Cancer.
Thank goodness.
I know. Friday, water everywhere. Mars, the planet of war, is connecting to the evolutionary North Node in Pisces. And then we have the Oscars on Sunday with Mercury retrograde connecting to Mars. So we're going to get into all of this, but I just think it's so, interesting that, waterways are really we're basically in, like nobody wants to label it World War III here. But I mean, man, that happened fast. But there's the Strait of Hormuz, which is the waterway that Iran controls, that all of the oil ships from that part of the world have to pass through, has been considered this like dangerous zone and, created all kinds of chaos for many, profits for others. So that's been a central part of meltdowns, breakdowns, all the things that have happened as a result of this chaotic, not a war, but yes, a war. No one knows what they're officially calling it, but we know.
Well, whatever it is, we are sending all of our thoughts to our friends and readers and listeners in the Middle East, especially, who are the innocent everyday people who are getting caught up in this war, and to service members who are getting dragged into it to serve America in this chaotic outbreak. So, governments are not people. People are not governments. They're governments, even though the governments are supposed to represent them
and work for them and are paid by the people.
Yes, at least here. But more than ever, the people are the ones who are having to pay the price and suffer in all of these countries and territories. So we are thinking of you if you happen to hear this, and just being astrologers is really a commitment to humanity, our shared humanity. It is a way we've, as silly as it may sound to some people, why are you talking about this with astrology? Well, not only as above, so below, but in those moments when there is chaos and there is uncertainty that goes beyond what a logical explanation can help you understand, or goes beyond when you're getting all kinds of conflicting reports and information on the news, more often than you would think. And I don't think we need to talk to anyone here. We're preaching to the choir, but more often than you'd think, people actually call their astrologers and their psychics, or go to horoscopes and intuitives and healers to make sense of it. and say, what is really going on here? What energy is at play? What maybe
Yeah.
karmic lesson does humanity need to
What
learn? So
astrological cycles and
when will this end? How is it going to turn out?
man,
Yeah.
I think we should talk about that today a bit, from our perspective as astrologers. I mean, Mercury retrograde is known for scrambling, travel, and you know, what's happened though. I mean, in Pisces is interesting. It's the last sign of the zodiac. So right now there's a lot of energy, a lot of planetary action in the last sign of the zodiac, Pisces, and the first sign of the zodiac, which is Aries. And so Pisces can, the zodiac wheel kind of it has a birth to death rotation. It's a life cycle. So the very first sign, Aries, is a lot like the baby. Everything's new, everything's immediate. Aries is also the sign of war. And then Pisces is sort of like elderhood when you're in that liminal space where you realize that you will soon be leaving your body and that there's more. You have to start thinking that there's more than just where does my soul go from here? So we said in our book, our 2026 horoscope book, the year of the unbridled spirit, that you are a spiritual being having a human experience. And it's really important in moments like these. That's something we all have to remember right now. I think it's something that can keep us in a weird way grounded, even though it's maybe one of the most ungrounding things. You're not just a body, you're a spirit, you're a soul. Maybe, you know, and that we all actually maybe can have a say in the world events by simply even tuning into our minds, our thoughts. There's many of the ancient wisdom traditions say this is all an illusion, it's all a dream, it's all a play. And while it doesn't just, tell that to somebody who, just stub their toe or worse, and they're like, yeah,
Well,
whatever.
Aries is very physical and immediate.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's the baby. So if a baby doesn't think, it just cries. It hurts itself or it laughs or just, there's no stimulus response pause, really. It's very immediate. So we have a lot of that energy in the air. And then Pisces is kind of the 5D healer, kind of half on this planet, half on another one. It's the bridge, it's the last zodiac sign. So we are simultaneously, like you said, Tali,
Well,
experiencing
yeah.
those,
And what's
those,
happening this week is really a kind of a mutual reception of those as well, because Mars, which is the ruler of Aries, is in
mm,
Pisces, and Neptune, which is the ruler of Pisces, is in Aries. Now, Mars is a much shorter transit. It moved in last week and it's there until April 9th. But Neptune is in Aries for 13 years, all the way till 2039. And we have been talking about this for weeks, like Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries. Those were two of the big deal transits this year. And unfortunately, we are seeing the signature of war. Aries is,
which we did write about in the book. Now let's just quickly explain what mutual reception means.
yes,
So, and even Mercury retrograde a little bit, because we know that our listeners are at all levels of astro
sure.
knowledge. Mutual reception is when, so every zodiac sign has a planet that rules it, meaning the traits mythologically of that planet that it symbolizes, the part of life that it rules, are most similar to the traits of the zodiac sign. So Mars, the god of war in mythology, is the ruler of Aries for that very reason. Aries has the warrior spirit. Neptune, which is the healer, dreamer, poet, illusion
Escapist.
spinner, yeah, is rules Pisces, which is that last sign that has those traits as well. So the ruler of Aries, Mars, is in Pisces. which is
Right
ruled by
now.
Neptune right now, this week. And then on March 2nd until April 9th, yeah, Mars went into Pisces. And then the ruler of Pisces, which is Neptune, is in Aries. So they've traded places, and that's what mutual reception means. And that's what that creates, is this sort of duality, is that you can't have one without the other. You can't have Pisces without Aries, Aries without Pisces. You're simultaneously working through this paradox. I think
Yeah.
sometimes people think of astrology as like kind of like an efficient decluttering expert, or kind of like the little the housekeeping service that comes and straightens everything out and puts it in place. No, maybe an astrologer will do that with their explanation, but the planets do what they do, and we just kind of have to deal with it and understand the energy so that we
That we
can
have to
use
work
it.
with.
So we can, yeah. So sometimes you have to fly a plane through a storm, and other times you have, a nice tailwind that gets you in an hour early.
Well,
But
that, knowing and learning astrology is what has only strengthened my belief that we're spiritual beings having a human, experience, and that we're here for lessons and teachings and soul evolution. Because if not, I mean, astrology gives you a little bit of a cheat code, or a big cheat code, to kind of look ahead and see what might be coming. And it's like, we don't want, there's lots of ways that Saturn and Neptune and Aries. Saturn, which is, the rigid disciplinarian, is in Aries for 2 years. And Neptune is that dreamer fog machine. So they're together right now in the skies. So it's like, we're having this like cultural crisis point around this authoritarian energy, which can be very Aries and very Saturn. Um, Neptune also rules our faith, and in Aries, it's like we're seeing faith being weaponized everywhere. Our own heritage with Israel creating wars all over the place. And then, Benjamin Netanyahu's been waiting. He said 40 years for the chance to
okay.
go and attack Iran. This is some personal faith-based vendetta. Meanwhile, the people of Iran have been suffering under the hands of a religious restrictive regime, and word on the street is they've already picked and are ready to name their new supreme leader. So here we are in
And
this.
here in America, we have people, Trump's faith leader, praying over
Oh
him,
God,
and
did you
the
see that this
Pete
week?
Hegseth, with all his tattoos, who's a Christian nationalist. We have,
Well,
you
yes,
know,
evangelicals believe that there has to be, they want to bring the apocalypse, because that's
the
supposed to bring the
rapture.
second, it's actually the apocalypse. It's supposed to bring the second coming of Christ. And Israel has to, I don't know. I don't know the
And
whole way it
and they
works.
roll their eyes at astrology. Like, at least we can
No, they
point to
think
a
astrology
planet.
is the devil. A lot
No,
of
I
them.
know. Yeah, I know. It's more like, it's like, do you know what this sounds like? This interpretation of God and Jesus and faith sounds so out there to me. I'm like, I don't even know. I don't even know what to say. So,
Which is in the book of Revelation. It's like the world is coming to an end with this battle between good and evil, and there's like the rise of the Antichrist, and Israel is involved in this.
the
And I
part
mean,
I don't get is that the most evil people think of themselves as forces of good. And
like, oh yeah.
when you have that behind you, well, and this, yes, this is Neptune and Aries weaponized faith, like you said. It's really it's really something
Yeah, well, I
right
think
now,
that, like there's a lot of manipulation going on with,
which is
Neptune and
Neptune, which is
Aries,
Pisces.
around, I mean, Neptune and Aries.
Anger, around people's anger too.
Oh,
That's an
totally.
Aries trait. And Mercury retrograde, just really quickly, what happens when Mercury is retrograde is that Mercury passes the Earth in its trip around the sun, and because they travel at different speeds, Mercury appears to be going backwards from our vantage point on Earth. That's how we measure the movement of the planets from Earth. Um, so all things that Mercury rules, which are communication, interactivity, technology, travel, transportation, all of those things can go haywire or quote unquote backwards. So that's why there are so many, that's why you're advised sometimes to pause on signing contracts or to maybe not buy new electronic equipment, computers, phones, anything like that. Mercury rules data. So back up your passwords. Be careful about that sort of thing. Like we have an article on it for anyone who's new to it. I mean, Mercury retrograde is kind of the thing that every mainstream media source has now made their favorite clickbait. So a lot, most people know what it means, but
Yeah, we like to, it's a good idea to talk about it. And since it is known for messing with data and scheduling, a lot of times it will interfere with travel. And that has been happening. I mean, only this Thursday was the first chartered plane sent in to take American citizens out of the Middle East. So
right, all the
there was
embassies.
huge chaos. Where US citizens were told to find out and figure out their way to get home, but they couldn't fly out of the airports. They had to like figure out how to get to Poland and different countries like that to
And the
fly out.
embassies, I think, like just had like recorded messages and
Yeah, I
that
mean, it
sort of
just
thing.
shows what chaos is happening under the Trump administration. And so, you
Now, we
know,
did have one cause to celebrate, which is the
right.
removal of Kristi Noem as the head of ICE. However, and she is a Sagittarius, so Jupiter retrograde, the ruling planet, back to ruling planets of Sagittarius, got her out in the last minute, but her successor, who's a Leo, Mark Wayne Mullen, is really giving middle school dropout level of proficiency here. So we did not get we did not get proper replacements for anyone who
Well,
was
he's like
removed.
a unga bunga kind of red meat manosphere J6er vibe, right?
Aries South Node, so 1977. Aries South Node people have been behaving badly under this air. Now, the South Node in your chart is kind of your past life imprint and sort of an energy that maybe you have a little too much of and need to overcome with your Libra North Node. So, two people with Aries South Nodes were unflatteringly portrayed by their own doing this past week. And it's so funny because it's like the Aries and the Pisces themes are really showing up like war and actors and the Oscars. So Timothy Chalamet was on some televised conversation with Matthew McConaughey. They were kind of broing out, and he made some disparaging, cocky remark about he's like ballet and theater
Or he
and
said
not,
no one goes to the ballet or opera anymore or something
which
like
is
that.
interesting because those are Pisces. Dance is ruled by Pisces. So with
But also
Mars and Pisces,
incredibly athletic Mars energy
yeah,
required.
absolutely. So not only was it disrespectful, I believe his mother and sister are professional ballerinas, but it was just weird and unnecessary. Like I'm not sure what he was trying to.
He's really
he-
going into he's really just sort of, downgrading with his Kardashian Jenner info. Like the most culture I've ever seen them enjoy is like front row at at like Fashion Week, which there's a lot of artistry that goes into couture, but like it's all eye candy, like, and ooh, I can see it's just the looksism, the lack of depth is seeming to be rubbing off on him, I would say.
yeah. And he just finished his Saturn return, which he has Saturn in Pisces. So February 13th, Saturn left Pisces. So of all the things to pick on, Pisces ruled
What an
arts like
idiot.
ballet and dance was not it. So he was like, I lost 14 cents on my internet. I'm not quite sure what the hell he meant like that, but it's like you lost a lot more than that. I think he said on his Instagram, whatever.
14,000 followers probably or something. I don't know.
Yeah, he was trying to be cool. I don't know what he lost,
Just
but
stop, Timothy. Just stop. Well,
yeah,
speaking of, saying the wrong thing, you did mention Jupiter, which is Jupiter is a loudmouth, live out loud, bloviating, but also abundant and lucky planet. And all of the outer planets go retrograde for almost half the year, Jupiter through Pluto. So, Mercury's not the only planet that goes retrograde. All of them do at some point, but Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto are retrograde for 4 to 5 months of every single year. So there's no avoiding it. Now, Jupiter started its retrograde on 11/11, November 11th of last year. And it actually moved into Cancer for a year. So Jupiter, every 12 to 13 years, it'll come to a specific sign and hang out there for about a year. But in the middle of that passage, it's going to have 4 months retrograde. That's just the way it works every year. So Jupiter moved into Cancer on June 9th of 2025. And it's there until this June 30th. And it's interesting because Cancer's a sign of women. And sometimes Jupiter can really blow up things we need to see, things that are. So I think we've really seen with Jupiter and Cancer, like some really egregious women, like
which is Cancer
Ghislaine
rule.
Maxwell getting like the 4-star treatment in jail. We've had Christy Nome and her horseback
Pam
riding ad,
Bondi.
Pam Bondi, who's the absolute worst. But
Jupiter is that excess and greed and just debauchery in its lowest form. And like that is what we've been seeing. Like Christy Nome's firing, was who even knows why, but it was, because she wasn't optics, we know, but it came out that she had gold rims on ice vehicles and this private plane
the
where she might have been having an
$100 million
affair.
with
$200
Corey.
million ad
It's
of
pretty
her on a
much known that
horse.
she's been having an affair with Corey Lewandowski, who flies everywhere with
Virgo.
her Virgo. Yeah, so I'm just thinking, like, you have $100 million luxury jets, but the U.S. cannot fly people out of Dubai or the UAE. Like, what the hell? It's just more of that extreme inequality. So while we're like watching these kind of abuses of power going on, Jupiter was Zeus. So, we have to think, Jupiter can be this egregious, you know, autocratic energy too. And every planet has a kind of a favorite spot in the zodiac that it likes to be in. It's called it exalted, where it really acts without guardrails. And Cancer happens to be the exalted position for Jupiter. And I think it's kind of, you can sort of picture Zeus kind of leaning back on the throne. And I feel like since Jupiter did go into Cancer, we've had just a lot of just like puffing up, a lot of like people feeling very confident and then a lot of nationalism as well. So Jupiter is, you know, large and in charge, but Cancer is the home sign. So there's this, we're seeing this egregious nationalism, these land grabs. Pete Hegseth this week, from the Department of War, was talking
Oh
about
God.
how, you know, this redrawn map of the greater Americas that had, Greenland and Canada and, just like, what are you doing here? It's just this like,
Want him to go away so badly.
I know it's created this bravado, this nationalistic bravado
But it's the
too.
crab shell. So, you usually, if you hear about Cancer, you hear about they're shy and sweet and nurturing and caretaking. So, where is any of that? Well, the shadow side of the crab is that armored shell, the puffed up, self-protective underbelly. Like we're seeing the underbelly of so many countries, Jupiter
It's
internationally,
true.
through the international alliances. Cancer is almost sort of like it's a sign of family, but in its shadow expression is sort of like a fraternity hazing people or a secret society, like a
It's really true.
Freemasons, but maybe with or it can be anything, it can be a cult as well. So something it can bring out can be protectors of the home and patriotism, but we know what that word has been twisted into nationalism and protectionism, the anti-immigrant sentiment. When you're Cancer's home and family, uh, again, the shadow of that is like you're not a family
The
member, so
fear
you're
of the
the enemy,
other.
the
Yeah.
fear of strangers and others. So Jupiter magnifies everything as well and exposes the truth. So we're seeing the truth of all these leaders as well and how they're treating things. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the exalting of Jupiter in Cancer is also an amplification of that energy, like the global spotlight coming home, peering into the homes that the homelands. I mean, homeland security. I've heard that, those two words more than ever with Jupiter and Cancer. So I'm
And
so
since it's
ready
gone
for,
retrograde
yeah,
last
it's been,
November, there's been the
yeah,
increased, the
true.
intensified ice. I mean, it's been bad all along. We had, it seems like years ago that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was taken,
I
from his
know, right?
but just yeah, it's just gotten so much worse. But also when you look at Minneapolis and the way that the women of Minneapolis, many of the people, but many women and created this, underground network, sort of we're Neptune was last in Aries during the Civil War and the Underground Railroad. And I feel like the Minneapolis community organizing was like a modern day version of that a little bit.
Yeah, for
There was
sure.
sort of
Not even a little bit, a lot, I feel like.
yeah, I mean, there's like like a quiet underground resistance there. Well, now Jupiter is going direct in Cancer on Tuesday, and it'll be moving ahead in Cancer until June 30th, and it moves on to Leo for the second half of the year. And I wonder what it's going to bring up because when the retrograde happens, I mean, when Jupiter first moves into a sign, it's like, woo, 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 okay, all systems go. And then the retrograde happens and kind of pulls us back. And we have to say, was that too much of a good thing? Or what's going on here? We've had a chance to kind of dig in. I think the brave women, the Epstein survivors have really
Yeah, that's another great
exemplified just
example.
like the bravery of women during Jupiter in Cancer. And so more and more have, more Epstein files have dropped this week. There were some released with the Trump allegations in there. Super, more disturbing news, more disturbing reports, and you know,
Yeah,
sort of
people often ask us like, okay, this planet's going out of retrograde. Is it okay to feel hopeful now? What can we look forward to? And yeah, and I think one area where people are feeling they haven't seen bravery or support is from a lot of uh, politicians, elected officials, Senate, Congress, and we have from individuals. I mean, one Jupiter retrograde in Cancer loss for many people for Team Woman was Jasmine Crockett losing to James Tallarico, which, I thought she had a chance maybe because of Saturn in Aries, but Saturn is a little bit of a wild card. Saturn can elevate your authority, but it also can throw obstacles in the way. So maybe, since it's newly in Aries, my thought for Jasmine Crockett is that maybe there's some like go back to the drawing board, spend the next couple years of Saturn and Aries really strengthening any weak spots. That's what Saturn wants you to do. And she did really, they were very classy with each other, how they handled their race, and they did set a good example. So Saturn is the role model. So, people were really disappointed, like, oh, people are so afraid of not electing a white man. Um,
Yeah, it's this whole narrative, and sadly, it may indeed be true, but is it
we'll
as
never
true as
know.
people are that a white man is more likely to win and more electable, especially because he's a Christian and, you know, open about his faith? I guess we'll have to see when it comes to the actual election.
I always like to quote Cancer Nelson Mandela, who said it's only impossible until it's done. I mean, I remember when Barack Obama won the election in 2008. I was literally taking a nap in my apartment in New York City, and I had the windows open. It was warm. And I hear all this cheering all of a sudden. I like woke up
Hmm.
and it was like a deep sleep. And I was like, whoa, where am I? And then I was like, what? It was almost like a reality adjustment. Like, because I hoped, but because you have no muscle memory of something, you're like, could it really happen? I mean, is it okay to believe? And I think that feeling really does describe this Pisces dream state and Aries fervent desire to have something new intersecting this month and this year, and how we're feeling that, we're even in a 1 year, and last year was a 9 year. We're in the horse year and we're in a snake year. The energies of the ending moving into the new and the novel and the beginning and the fresh. It's like this is a corrective year in that way, but it's also kind of up to humanity
It's the
too.
mutual reception we were
It's
talking
a
about with
mutual
the
reception. It's
Pisces,
like
the
and
endings, and Aries beginnings. But I do think, we're at the sort of the cusp of something new, something that hasn't been done and seen before. And the fact that that is still the narrative, that a white Christian man is more electable than someone who's actually been sitting in Congress, is a lawyer, knows, the law, but that's just obviously the racism, the sexism. We haven't even begun to really scratch the surface, and we've had so much backlash around it since Trump's second term that, it's just like, it is sometimes discouraging and hard to feel like things are actually going to change. But this is where astrology really comes in handy, where we are, you know, have looking ahead, seeing that indeed change is whipping up, but
that is
it's
what
chaotic
happens
right
though.
now.
Like before a change and after a change, like remembering Obama's election victory, like is a real reminder of like a space that we can only hope to be in at the midterms. I don't know, but just the how heavily, the negativity starts to weigh on you after a while, and how easy it is to get discouraged. And it's a tough position for us as astrologers, knowing that people are like, I've lost hope from reading the news. Now I want to go to an astrologer for hope. And how can we give you hope as well as, the real picture? Because truly we can't just be like, well, you know, just manifest only, because that would be
And what is hope?
irresponsible.
Yeah, what are we even hoping for? Like hope. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's unpack that
Pluto,
word.
hope is associated with Aquarius. And Aquarius is where Pluto is right now, the shadow dancer. So,
Mm.
shadow work around hope. Hope is what produces dopamine, having something to look forward to, having a possibility, having a future that makes you feel like you want to wake up in the morning. It's essential, I think, to our survival to have some hope. And I feel like people find hope wherever they can, or else they don't want to be here. And I think
Yeah.
Americans and people in the West have the most access to hope of anyone. I think about the people who've been living under the Ayatollah's regime. Like, even they find hope where they can. Where is the hope coming? Like, what is the hope that we're addicted to? Like, is hope a way of, is hope also becoming emotional and spiritual bypass? Or are we looking for hope through quick fixes? I mean, I think that it's important a lot of people are working out now. A lot of people are doing more exercise. We're pumping up our dopamine and, our endorphin levels. I think that's
I think
important.
that's what people are. I think it's what people are really asking for is not false hope. They may think that like something positive. Like I saw this one social media influencer who was like, "I'm gonna go dance at a wedding this weekend and not feel bad about it. I'm gonna turn off Instagram because boy, is it depressing." And it's like, just that's just don't even say it. Go dance then. Go dance. You don't have to tell the world that because it's so insensitive to people who can't dance. They've lost their homes, their families. It's like, please don't do that. But we all deserve it's a human nature, I believe, to like want to have a future that you're excited to live into, a future that makes you want to get up, whether that's providing for your family or creating something. The human soul is creative and it needs to it's either creating or destroying. And so when we see so much destruction around us, we can lose touch with that creative spark.
True.
Can we do anything about this if we have to live through this?
Yeah, and I think
Um,
it's a need for like like for so long we've sort of been handed a prescription for hope. For certainly for us as Gen Xers, it's like, okay, I hope I get good grades and do well in this test. So like I hope I get into a really good college. I hope I get a good job. I hope I make enough money to buy a house. I hope I can travel the world. I hope I can
it's
eat
about
at every restaurant.
having.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And now it's like, wow, I think hope needs to be a lot of a lot of Gen Xers, people our age, are so not prepared to afford the cost of living of retirement. Boomers were able to go out and buy the house and invest, and younger generations, millennials, Gen Z, like, what is the hope? They've got climate change. They've got so many like expensive rising costs of impossible to afford houses.
And I think that's why a Democratic socialist won the mayoral election in New York
He gave
because
people hope
he gave people hope
in a
because
different
what he
way.
did was he gave people the idea that there could be a new system.
I
So
knew, yep, that's
maybe
Pluto
there's
and
some
Aquarius right
freedom. I
there.
mean,
Yep.
this given the planetary lineup that we have with Neptune and Aries till 2039, Uranus going into Gemini until 2033 at the end of April, like we can feel hopeless if we keep trying to force a square peg into a round hole and keep trying to force ourselves into this model. What gives me hope is when I read something about how a group of people has done something differently, like these people are living communally, for example, or like we talked about
Mm.
this a few months ago, the bird's nest, all these women in their 60s who didn't want to just follow the go find a new companion. They were single. Like they gave up hope in relationships in a sense that was empowering for them. They didn't give up on relationships. They forged relationships with each other. Some may have romantic relationships, but they stopped centering their lives around a romantic relationship. I've been
Right.
seeing that word come up a lot. Millennials speak sometimes is very careful, but I actually really like the word centering. What are you centering your choices around? That is where you can find the relationship with hope that you brought up, Tali. It's like if you're centering your life around unaffordable cost of living and having a home, like I want to be a homeowner and it has to look like it looked for boomers and Gen Xers who could afford it. That's unlikely to happen. But that doesn't mean you have to be hopeless about your life. So this is again
It
that
doesn't mean you have to be
Aries
hopeless about
Pisces.
making that dream come true about getting a home either, but it's
It
like
doesn't.
but a system change. I mean, Pluto is the planet of transformation. It's destroyer and regenerator. It's the phoenix rising down, rising from the ashes. It tears stuff down to the studs for a total gut renovation and rebuild. And Pluto's in
Yeah.
Aquarius, the sign that does rule hope. Like I said, it also rules technology, it rules community, it rules our idealistic networks of humanity, humanitarianism. It's there for all the way till 2044. So we got
Yeah.
18 more years of it. But we do have some things to look forward to. Already moving the needle with that this year, just to give us some hope about hope on July 26th, the lunar North Node, which is the higher calling for humanity. Where are we ready to evolve? It's moving into Aquarius, and it's there all the way until March 26th, 2028. So we have a long period of time starting this July 26th. The last time the North Node was in Aquarius was when Obama won the election, right? In
Oh yeah. And remember
2008.
that was all those posters with him that said hope on
Hope,
them.
right. And
Yes, we can and hope,
right,
weirdly.
right. I was thinking that. And then Uranus, which is the planet that rules Aquarius, is having a sign change this April 25th, which is a huge deal because for the last 7 years, Uranus was in Taurus. And we were talking about earlier how every planet loves being in a certain sign, but also hates being in certain signs. Uranus is what's called in fall in Taurus, which is the opposite basically of exalted. It's like the change making, revolutionary, spirited sci-fi vibe of Uranus, and Taurus, which is very, down to
Traditional.
earth, traditional, rooted. It's like been a very tough match and a tough cycle to go through. It's brought a lot of conservatism back, a lot of like people clinging to
The
old
trad
fashioned,
wives.
oh God, yeah. Well, Uranus goes into Gemini for 7 years on April 25th. And I think that's going to bring a lot of new conversation, a lot of new dialogue about how we share resources, cooperate, work together. A lot of, it's a lot like a 7 year think tank in a lot of ways, and maybe some smaller communities, people banding together to buy buildings, work, live spaces in a new way that are even some high rises becoming cooperatives or
Yeah.
full all in one. Where I go to the gym in Seattle, the building is kind of like that. It's very inspiring, actually. We have this great co op PCC that I love. They have a mini PCC grocery store downstairs. The main floor has a coffee shop with a restaurant and all these third spaces that they've built in. It's a high rise, so it has offices as well as apartments. So it's almost like you don't have to leave the building, which is a little, extreme, I think, but it's set up to be communal. There are outdoor decks, there are couches, like really nice furniture and art. And it's every time I work out afterwards, I just go and I kind of sit in one of the booths. There's people around me who are on their lunch breaks. And, when you work for yourself, it's like I've got a co-working space there. And the building was just designed, I think, very thoughtfully to create and foster community. And it just feels really good in there. It just
That
feels like,
feels like where the world is heading for
there
sure
might be
and needs to be.
schools in future ones. There might be, more, even daycare. I just,
The reason we feel hopeful when we hear about something novel like that, novelty does create dopamine, but because it's also there's a spark of creativity behind it. Someone wasn't just like going through the motions and doing something the way it's always been done, even though it's out of step with where people are right now. So, and that's again, this is a 1 year in numerology because if you add up the digits of the year 2026, they add up to 1, 10, but then 1 plus 0 is 1. And this is a year for innovation, for your unique ideas. Even the last time Uranus was in Gemini was 1941 to 49, really 1942. It settled in, and that was during World War II, which is the part of it that we don't love. It was also the wartime boom of, the sad truth is that war does stimulate factories and productions and government contracts and economies. And the fact that that is true about our economy is deeply troubling. But that Rosie the Riveter era, hopefully we can get the energy of that without having to go to war and have a world war that goes on any further than it already has. I will remain hopeful, even if in an unrealistic way for things like that, because I'm just anti-war. Um,
well, I just read a little live update that Iran has named Ali Khamenei's son,
oh, God.
Mojtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader. So another, you know,
Once again, like we said, we need a
yeah,
system change,
cleric.
not a regime change, because it's just more of the same.
Yeah,
Christy Nome to Mark Wayne Mullins. It's like, that's not any better. It's just another.
nothing. Yeah, this is just so as Jupiter turns direct this Tuesday, there could be, I think people are tired of the illusion. And let's move on to Friday when Mars, which is in Pisces, connects with the lunar north node in Pisces. So the lunar north node is in Pisces until July 27th. Then it moves back into Aquarius. The nodes always go in reverse to the zodiac. It's interesting because they're kind of pulling us through our karmic lesson. So we have to go back to go forward. The lunar
Mhm.
nodes are actually these 2 points in the sky that are associated with where the eclipses are taking place. So our eclipses right now this year are happening in those signs, Pisces and Virgo, Aquarius and Leo. So the nodes are aligning with the eclipses. So, they're the shadow work, karma, growth, collective destiny points. And I just feel like we are definitely going to see some anger coming, real anger from people at this more of the same lying, illusion, manipulation. That's a shadow of Pisces that we're going to pull you down. We're going to fool you. We're going to hypnotize you. Like, okay, everyone was dancing in the street about the Ayatollah being killed, and now his son is the supreme leader. Meanwhile, Trump is telling everyone that Iran has surrendered, and Netanyahu is saying they're going to kill any leader that is named. It's a mess. Trump is already saying he's gearing up to take over Cuba. There's just mess after mess after mess.
Yeah.
It's like the swamp.
Remember Venezuela, anyone? No,
Right.
me
Where is
neither.
Maduro?
Is he
Remember that
still in
guy who
Brooklyn?
killed? Charlie Kirk, supposedly, Tyler Robinson. Where's he? There's just one elusive
Pisces.
grift after
Yeah.
another. So I just am so curious, like the rage that's going to boil over
Well,
as
interestingly,
Mars conjuncts the North Node.
one of the symbols, mythological symbols people keep talking about is Hydra, which was a
Mm,
water serpent with multiple
right.
heads. Now, Aries rules the head, Pisces rules the sea. So Hydra is a very fitting mythological creature to invoke right now. It's like that you cut off the head and another head just grows and shows up. So, this many-headed serpent.
Mm.
And that's what it feels like we're getting. You out with Christy Nome, in with Mark Wade Mullins, out with Kameni Sr., in with Kameni Jr. It's like, yeah, this is not a change, but we, not to sound like a bumper sticker, but we do have to be the change this year. And, we have a special episode of the podcast that I am editing with our friend who is an Iranian artist and filmmaker, has done some amazing projects, both in Iran and also has a really cool background in America, working with some of the biggest metal bands and rock bands from Bon Jovi to Poison to Motley Crue.
That's right.
She and I got together for a conversation under the lunar eclipse on 3/3, and I'm editing that and going to share some of her work. She made a
Can't
documentary
wait
about
for
the
that.
yeah, she made a documentary about the youth of Iran in 2005 when they had their first in ages so-called democratic election. And yeah, just that's all I'll say about it. But I'm very excited to share it with you guys for a different story about Iran and the Middle East than what all that you hear on the news, which you should pay attention to as well, of course.
Well, absolutely. And let's take it to a maybe lighter note for the end of the week. The Oscars are coming up this Sunday. So, you know, talk about, I mean, many people boycott the Oscars. And as usual, almost every single nominee remains white. There's not a single woman of color who has been nominated as actress in a leading role, best
God.
actress. Um, but I honestly, I'm like such a bad like Oscars person because I watch one of the movies and then I'll watch them after. I wanted to see Hamnet and I didn't. I didn't want to see Marty Supreme, even though I like Odessa Zion in I Love LA. She's a Gemini, but I don't know. I just cringe at supporting Timothy Chalamet just for some reason. He just gets on my nerves so much. He's a cap. So the best actor in the leading role nominees are Timothy Chalamet,
Capricorn.
Capricorn, Leonardo DiCaprio, a Scorpio, Ethan Hawke, a Scorpio. I didn't see Leonardo for One Battle After Another, Ethan Hawke in Blue Moon. And then we had Wagner Mora, the secret agent who's a Cancer. Michael B. Jordan in Sinners. I did see that. He's an Aquarius and he played the Smokestack twins. Did an amazing job
Oh, I love
playing
him.
two. Yeah. So it's interesting. We have a lot of water signs there, Leonardo, Ethan, and Wagner. So they're kind of getting some
I feel like the
blessings right now.
Cancer has the best luck, best chance of winning, though. But God, not the Capricorn. I mean, I hate to say it, but Capricorns do have some blessings from Jupiter, so we might end up with Marty Supreme. God, could we just take the word supreme out of everything this week? We don't need
Exactly.
Marty Supreme. We don't need supreme leaders.
White supremacy at the
Supremacy.
Oscars or
Oh my
anywhere.
God,
Although
exactly.
Michael B. Jordan, as an Aquarius with his ruling
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
planet, kind of he's at the end of this tour of duty of Uranus and
Yeah, I would love to see him
Taurus,
win.
this is all to say, like, I'm not picking a winner here. Sorry. We're not, I don't feel like
I mean,
I,
Scorpios have Jupiter in their house of fame.
yeah.
So they, Leonardo DiCaprio and Ethan Hawke, have some, they all have something in their favor.
Well, there is a Scorpio from Sinners who has Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Delroy Lindo.
I
We
like him.
have Benicio del Toro from One Battle After Another. He's a Pisces. So he may, having just graduated from Saturn in his sign, may
Mm-hmm.
stand a chance. Jacob Elordi for Frankenstein, a Cancer. Cancer, if you have Jupiter in your
I
sign,
mean,
you
yeah,
kind of have a
another, yeah. Plus, everybody's into him right now.
Sean Penn, One Battle After Another, Leo. I don't feel like Leos are really that favored by the stars with Jupiter in the sign before there's next year. Leos will have their chance, but Leos are really, when Jupiter's
They're a
in the
little
sign before
overlooked.
yours in your solar 12th house, you're kind of being pushed under the radar and in a bit of a transition.
Sometimes because it's Jupiter rules theater, and I mean, not Jupiter, sorry, the 12th house is like theater. So if it's like a period film about a historical era, I've seen that work because it's that sort of that fantasy. But yeah,
One battle after another, a war movie is very much on brand
yeah.
for
Maybe the
wins with
movie will
Saturn
win
and
for best
Neptune and
film or
Aries.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, now
Hmm.
Stellan Skarsgård, Sentimental Value, which I heard was amazing. He's a Gemini, father of Alexander Skarsgård, and I guess he was the original actor. So
Really?
Gemini's a little bit tricky,
Uranus in
you
their
know.
12th house. So that, yeah, maybe a little just too soon.
Now, actress in a leading role, we have Jessie Buckley, who's a Capricorn, like Timothy, for Hamnet, the story about
She's got a
Shakespeare's
chance.
wife, which I wanted to see that one. And Rose Byrne is a Leo for If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. Again, we just said Leos. They do have the 12th house,
I
magical
heard that was really
energy.
good, but again, they may get
I
overlooked.
know I've got to say Kate Hudson, sung blues. Aries with Saturn in their sign is going to be a little tough right
Yeah, we
there.
saw what happened to Jasmine Crockett. She's a late Aries, I think, toward the end, but
I mean,
we
she's
love
a
her. She had us on her podcast with her brother Oliver. We love them, and Goldie, their mom, who we've done readings for all of them. But yeah, we love you, Kate. Good luck.
hope Neptune helps you there. Renata Rienzvi from Sentimental Value, who's a Sagittarius. This is actually Saturn and Neptune in the fifth house for Sagittarians could bring some acclaim
It's a
there.
little soon, but
A little
maybe.
soon, yeah. I'm thinking, yeah, not Philip. Emma Stone, a Scorpio for Begonia. Like you said, the
Maybe.
Scorpios have Jupiter in the fifth house of fame, so there's a chance. Now
There's a lot of them
a
nominated.
lot of them, yeah, yep. I think that does it for them. But the actress in a supporting role, we have Elle Fanning for Sentimental Value and Inga Ibstadter Lilias for Sentimental Value, both Aries. So kind of
Hmm.
the same thing as Kate Hudson, where it's like they're in the beginning of the Saturn cycle, so that could kind of suppress it,
Mm-hmm.
their chances from an astrological. Amy Madigan for weapons, she's a Virgo. South Node in
Yeah, so
Virgo is not
yeah.
exactly, favorable. Wunmi Mosaku from Sinners. She played Annie. She's Leo. We've talked about
Wow.
Leo as a
Everyone's got
possibility,
stuff against stacked against them in one
except for
way or
Jacob
another.
Elordi, the Cancer. And then Tiana Taylor for One Battle After Another, Sagittarius. So she's in the same camp as Renata from
I
Sentimental
mean,
Value.
people
Kind of,
love her right now, so I would, I'd love to see her win.
yeah. It's yeah, it's just the classic lineup, of so
And
anyways,
again, like it's just with Leo does rule it rules the theater, it rules the movies, it rules Hollywood. And until Jupiter goes into Leo on June 30th, we wrote about this in our 2026 horoscope book. Until it goes in, just even Hollywood is kind of
I
not
know
even a
it's
like
almost a
people are kind
waste
of
of
like,
time
ugh,
to make
celebrities.
it's a waste
Ew.
of time to even make predictions anymore because Hollywood is so jilted and lost. Like is this
That
even
may
going to be
change.
the
That was our
Academy
prediction.
even going to judge this fairly? I heard next or
Plus, with Mercury
2029, they're
retrograde.
only going to do the Oscars on YouTube. So TV is
Wow.
changing. Uranus and Gemini, like we talked about earlier, actually, that happens. Uranus comes to a sign every 84 years for 7 to 8 years. So it cycles through Gemini, really changed the way we interact with technology. Last time was 1941 to 49, which was when the color TV came. It was also when the atomic bomb was dropped, when Israel was formed, a lot of things that are kind of feeling frightening
Yeah.
right now. I mean, I almost, it's like where does this war end? It's like I was talking
Yeah.
about. It's like it just feels like some of these autocrats are I've got more bombs than you have and just itching to I hope I hope no bombs are dropped. I hope we don't get, you know, radical renegade strikes popping up everywhere, but I don't know. This is a year where we have to be just aware of the importance of not going to sleep. Not There was a conversation I had with a couple friends recently, and there's people love to talk about their anxiety and I have too much anxiety to talk about this subject or that, but it's like we're going to have to build some resilience around having hard conversations this year, because
Mhm.
otherwise we're going to get stuck trying to recycle that same quote unquote hope. Like we're not going to get to the new hope without hard conversations. I think the North Node being in Pisces, which is about compassion, sacrifice, subconscious processing, release, surrender. Like we have to, on last week's podcast, we talked at length about the hard conversations that we have to have within our own community. We have an Israeli father, or the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors.
And we grew up in a black, white, and Arab predominant neighborhood in Detroit in the 1970s and 80s, right after the Iranian Revolution and the Iran-Iraq War that began in 1980. And we had a huge wave of Iraqi immigrants that came to Detroit. So we have this very unusual lens, I would say, of how we grew up,
Yeah.
seeing different perspectives, which I talk about with our
Yeah, I
special
can't wait.
episode guests too, who also grew up bicultural. We found we had these very interesting parallels, and we've been friends for almost 25 years. So it's
Can't
not
wait to
just
hear it.
yeah, it's
But there
a
are hard
interesting.
conversations that are still, you know, tough to have within our community. It's like we have a reckoning because Israel, the country that was founded to, give Jews a safe place from, centuries of oppression, is now creating and doing a lot of harm around the globe. And people within our community are having a really hard time talking about it without feeling like you're self-hating, or you're betraying your community by criticizing, and yet to not criticize, to not look, to not put on
Fighting
those
over the word
glasses,
genocide and what is a genocide and what isn't, and just
to not
like
do
talk
to not
about
allow
yeah,
critical thinking within our communities. If we don't allow that, there will be no change. We're going to keep recycling these battles for, and we
and
have the
getting
kinds of
caught up on the
weapons now that
semantics
can,
of that
yeah,
too, rather than like pulling back and looking at the big picture of it all. Like, who cares what the semantic about people agreeing about the semantics? Look what's happening.
yeah. But we have to, like we are humanists ourselves. And yeah, there's a lot, like we said, this Jupiter in Cancer has brought almost this nationalism, even within ethno nationalism, religious nationalism, and this very cultish, protected, regressive thinking that is not where the world seems to be pointing in the age of Aquarius and astrologically. So we'll be
Yeah.
tracking this week by week. It's
Yeah.
not easy
And
to talk about, but it has to be. And we are here to point the arrows towards the planet and point our Sagittarius arrows in a hopeful direction, but a truthful direction, as truthful as we can. And that means having hard conversations with people in our community, people out of our community, looking at what's happening in the world. And, it's a lot to take in for all of us. And we do need to take care of ourselves. And we do need to
yeah,
manage our anxiety too. But we should not use that as a shield and a reason for not letting, we're much
we can't
stronger than we think.
ostrich.
Yeah, we're much stronger than
Well,
we
I
think
think,
we are.
like just really listening and reflecting on when people ask about that. I think there's long-term hope and there's short-term hope. And so watching the news can make you lose faith, like that anything is ever going to change. Now, one of the best ways to regulate your nervous system is to kind of zoom back in on the week ahead. So maybe we can
Mm-hmm.
try something sort of intentional right now, and like what are some takeaways that you can bring into your work. We've been talking about this, kind of one of the interesting reflections of Mercury retrograde is how people process information and learn. And some people learn from
Mm.
feeling a safe space or getting the information. And other people learn by just having sort of like bulleted steps and things that they can do proactively. So if we were to recap on this week where we have Jupiter going out of retrograde, Mercury retrograde, we do have a Sagittarius quarter moon also on the 11th, which is a balancing point. Um, and then we have the North Node and Mars and this Aries Pisces overlap. So I would say, like, kind of on a personal, proactive level, like with the Pisces energy, think about where you may be kind of not being clear or fooling yourself, or maybe even just kind of going along with something to keep the peace. With the, and that it's actually creating more toxicity by doing so.
Mm-hmm.
The Aries energy, what you can lean into is taking action, being direct. Like, where could you find courage and just do something that you've been putting off and avoiding? Say something, do it lovingly and responsibly, but where can you make an actual move instead of getting lost in your thoughts? I think with Jupiter, which is the ruler of Sagittarius, so on Tuesday and Wednesday, we have Jupiter going out of retrograde in Cancer. So maybe there's a family member or something you can do with your to your
Yeah.
home that you can move forward with Sagittarius and Jupiter. Also about wisdom and education. So could you take a workshop? Could you take a
Mm-hmm.
class? Whether it's to learn more about what's going on in the world or to educate yourself about something. A lot of people are learning about
Yeah.
AI. I don't know how I feel about that one way or another. I don't have an opinion about whether that's what you should be learning. Do something to, but do something to feed your own curiosity
Yeah.
and maybe improve your skills. So you're not if you're feeling helpless or hopeless. And then with the Mars North Node conjunction, like really get in touch over the weekend with your values. Like
Mm.
I had a really interesting conversation with a couple friends yesterday about the distinction between fighting against something and fighting for something, and
Mm.
like what is something that benefits everyone that is worth fighting for. So
I
a
like that.
common ground. So those would be my little takeaway actionable tips, just to kind of balance out um, the podcast for our listeners who, are like, all right, they told me to do this. I remember only one thing. They said to do
Mm.
this. And you find yourself in a scenario this week, tap into that.
Great. And we are opening up our books again for readings this spring. And March is pretty booked, but there's spots in April. There might be one or two in March. And astrostyle.com/readings. We've been really loving getting a chance to talk and meet, talk to so many of you and meet you and go over your chart and help you make a plan for the next year, 2 years, however long, crossroads moments. And so, yeah, astrostyle.com/readings for that. And thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more AstroTwins Radio. Thanks for tuning in to AstroTwins Radio. If today's episode gave you an aha moment, we'd be over the moon if you left us a 5-star review. It helps fellow astrology lovers find us. And make sure to hit subscribe and follow us on iTunes and Spotify so you never miss an episode. Want the full visual experience? You can also watch the video version on our YouTube at AstroTwins-TV. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at AstroTwins and head over to astrostyle.com to read your free daily, weekly, and monthly horoscope that we write for you with love. Until next time, move with intention and let the universe meet you there.